Alright guys, got the overalls on and ready to work. So this is an instruction video on cutting down a c10, c20, 73 to 87 long bed to short bed conversion. The way I do it, there's a lot of different ways to do these, but this is the way I like to do it. Here's all the tools you're going to need to do this job. This little thing, I don't even know what it's called, but I bought it. It helps strip metals. You can buy these at Harbor Freight, which most of my tools are from Harbor Freight, as you can see. I like buying cheaper tools and not spending 10 grand on tools or a 10 grand toolbox. I'd rather put that into my hot rods. And I've used these tools for years, and I get the warranty. If anything happens, I take them back. They work just as good as the high dollar tools, but I ain't got to wait for them to ship me back another high dollar tool. The only thing I didn't skip out on, I do love DeWalt grinders. And but on back to the tools. You know, usually I buy these cutoff wheels from Harbor Freight, the little Warriors, a 1/4 inch disc. I usually buy a DeWalt. You know, they call them cheetah discs, flapper wheels, sanding disc, whatever. A tape measure. You're gonna need a 9/16 1/2 inch sockets. You can use a ratchet, but I use the impact. It goes a lot quicker. Got a 9/16 1/2 inch ratchet for on the bottom. You're going to need those. Also, I use this little screwdriver. You'll see later in the videos to do bed sides. Just old junky screwdriver. You don't need nothing nice, but just a little one. Safety. Safety's a big deal. I've worked in the steel industry for a long time. And earplugs, trust me, because I got hearing problems. And I'm only 34 years old as it is. Safety glasses, which I forget sometimes myself, but real good thing to remember to put on your face, because I've had my eye drilled for metal 3 or 4 times now. Gloves. Definitely highly recommend gloves when cutting with that grinder. A lot of guys don't use this grinder. They'll use a little air grinder, but it goes a lot quicker for me. It's a lot cheaper. It does just as good as a job if you know what you're doing. Just don't get wild with it. These little clip-in discs, which I bought these ones from Napa for 10 of them. And I'll tell you what, believe it or not, these are a lot higher than the Harbor Freight disc. But the Harbor Freight disc is the next ones I'm going to buy again. I just had to run to town real quick, and they were the closest place I could get discs to finish up the last bed. So I'm going to use the rest of this box. And we got a squares, you know, we'll need the squares. We got these little butt weld clamps here that's got the adjustables on it. I never use adjustable things. I really just take this out and I'll, you know, just, you don't need them. You'll see later on in another video. But how I cut this, I like to, when I cut these bed sides here, I cut the back off, and I try to bring back, they'll make it look like this factory edge. So a lot of the drilling out these spot tacks, we'll wire wheel this back later in the video here later on, and you'll see me drill out all these spot tacks, and I'll put a hole all the way through. A lot of guys will drill them out and they clean that up, but I do it different. But I got a lift. If you ain't got a lift, you can build one of these right here, and it really helps out. I use this thing many of times to do many of beds, cut down the floor, set the floor in the floor of the shop, and then do the bed sides on it. It's just worked out really well for me. I've had it for years. It's awesome to have if you ain't got a lift. Trust me, I always didn't have a lift at times, and I needed that. So the back you can get away without doing cut lines, because we'll be taking out right in here. We'll be drilling out all these spot tacks right here, and we'll be cutting back to here. And then we'll leave this and we'll re-tack back to here. But that's later on in another video. Then you don't have to do no cut. We'll come here, we'll measure, and we'll cut, and then we'll leave it a 1/2 inch long to bend it back over. You'll get to see that. So then there will be no cut line, and you won't even know the back's been cut. But the way that 73 to 87 beds are made up front, they're different than 67 to 72. You have to have a cut line across the floor. And the way I do it, at least, I mean, unless someone knows some crazy other way to do it, and you're going to have them down the inside. But if you take your time and a little time and effort, you can make them really close to where you can get away with a little bit of a skim of a Bondo. But I'll show you. Back here, you're gonna have to remove these. The guy left them on there because you could take his tailgate off. take the tailgate off. And all right, like I was saying, the other flashlight was too light, so we had to stop for a minute. Too bright. There's little spot welds right in here you're going to have to cut eventually. You know, you see them right here, right there, and there should be one right in here usually. You'll have to cut those. So what I do is I raise it up or put it on my roll around thing. We'll get it up in the air, and I'll show you here. You're going to have to move all these bolts along the bottom. Get it up in the air here. Alright, I raised it up on the lift. I've never had one fall or anything of that nature. And we're going to have to remove all these bolts, all up in here. That's where them little ratchet wrenches and, you know, your little hand regular ratchet with a socket, you can't get in there to the impact, obviously. Remove all these bolts here. And the wheel well. Remove this bolt right here. You can usually leave this on here. I never really take it off. All here. And then you got all these along the front. Out here. And I remove all these from the bottom. It ain't going to fall apart because you got your welds out back still. And we got all these right in here still in the bed holding it strong and true. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and knock this out. We're not going to make you stand here and watch us take out every one of these bolts. So we'll be back here shortly. Alright guys, we're back. We got this whole side disassembled and off. Got the front panel off. The best way I find out, you know, after you get done, you're going to have a helper for sure to help you get this stuff off here, is to get a 2x4 and just set it down on there. It's pretty close to staying in factory line. Well, that way you ain't bending your floor back here or anything like that. Here's those spot welds I was telling you about right here. If you can see them, you're going to have to cut there, 2 spots, and there in 2 spots. You'll have to get a wire wheel and get all that, you know, that silicone in the corners out. And this is how I lay out my beds to start with. I'll show you a quick layout before we cut across the whole floor. I usually measure 4 3/4. We're going to try to save this area right here, and we're just going to move it forward. The reason why is we got this hump here. It's kind of hard to flatten this out. You have to beat it a lot. It looks ugly when you get done to put the bed down back flat. And plus, there's a little ear right here you'd have to copy. If you can see that, it makes it just complicated. So I just cut this section out here, and then we'll cut 5 3/4. I cut 5 3/4 off the back of my beds. The reason I do that is because if you look from the factory holes, if you're trying to put it back so your bed lines up good, your holes line up good, you come down here and measure to your, this is where this is going to be to the front, 5 3/4. If you see my mark right there, see that mark? Well, the center of that hole is setting about 5 1/8. So if you come here and you come back 5 3/4, well, the center of that hole's 5 1/8. So I figured out 5 3/4 is the best way to cut off these beds. So we'll cut this out here, and then we'll cut this section out here to where it's going to go. And then we'll come and measure from here back 5 3/4 because I got this rolled edge, which this rolled edge is around about 1/2 inch. And you can beat that, and it kind of makes it look like factory with the hammer on that one. But this one's just complicated to do. So we're going to measure 5 1/4, and that will leave us a 1/2 inch lip to come back with. And it just makes it easier to get it all lined up. You do it like this too, because then it goes back, you know, you're zacked on. You weld this out, it kind of holds this up. And after we drill out all these spot tacks. So we'll get this other bedside off, and then I'll get back with you guys after I get these cut out both sides, and then we'll show you the layout across the floor I do real quick. So see you soon. Alright guys, I got most of this all laid out. I already did that side over there. We're going to go ahead and cut this side out. I want to show you before I cut. And another thing I want to mention is when you lay out the tape, always make sure you put directions, what side you're going to cut on. Because I promise you, if you don't, you will end up cutting on the opposite side. It's just everyone's luck. You know how that goes. So I've already cut that side out. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this 5 3/4 out, and then I'll cut up to here. And then this will fall out, and this will remain to weld in up here. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Alright, now we got this all loose. We're going to go ahead, I'm going to wire wheel all these to where I got a spot tack. I'll spot tack all these, and this thing should just fall out of here. And then we'll cut this floor off, and then everything should be back in line. And we'll prep, and then we'll start welding it. But we'll get to there in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and put the wire wheel on and wire wheel all these spots. I'll show you what you're going to be looking for here. With a couple of them, and then we'll come back to when we're drilling them and show you what I do. That's what we're looking for. There's 2 spot welds there, and they should be in every one of them. There we are again. They're not in this one. Got all those done. Now what I like to do is get a hammer, which I didn't tell you guys you needed in the beginning of the video. This is to get a hammer and a punch. You don't have to, but it sure and the heck makes it a lot easier to do it, to punch all these and center them. Alright, we'll come back when I'm drilling them. Alright, here's what I do on drilling out these spot tacks here. I use this taper bit. It's always worked out good for me. I drill these holes. I'll show you one here, and I'll explain to you why I do this. My drill's about dead and this taper bit's about wore out. But so what I'll do is I'll drill these out, and when I get out, it creates a hole in the bottom of this. And when I get all these drilled out here, well, when I bring it up here, I don't have to re-drill no holes here. I already have a hole in this, and I'll spot tack it from the bottom up, and I weld all these holes back up from the bottom, and it that way you don't have to drill into this no more, create a big grind marks on it or whatever, and it gets your spot tacks back to like they were from the factory. So I'm going to finish drilling these out. She's going to stop the camera, and I'll come back when I'm about to cut this line here. Alright, we got the sides cut off, we got the brace out, all of them drilled out. Now you have a place to spot tack in from the bottom. So we got this out of here. So now I'm going to cut this 5 1/4 off the back. And then once I do that, we should be able to stick this up here with a couple of clamps and line all that up. We'll weld prep it and all that, and get this welded back up. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting this off now. Well, I did that cut across the top because I was running out of grinder disc. So I try to use much of my grinder disc as I can and run it out. So I just went ahead and made the slits all across the top where I couldn't get down in there. Get another grinder disc. And these ain't got to be the straightest lines you ever see. They just got to be pretty dang close. The reason I say that is you're beating that around anyways. And right down in here, you're not going to be able to tell a whole lot. That tailgates and the bumper is going to be in the way. So that's it. Alright, now I'll come back and I'm going to prep all these edges, get all these burrs off here. And we'll come back when we got it back up here and together and clamped together and show you what it looks like after that. Alright, so we got the brace back up under there now. And see this little section here? It's all good to be welded out. I'll weld this out and then I'll get this up on the lift, or you can do it on the ground, and I'll spot tack from the bottom, and we'll get to that when we get it back up on the lift. And like I was saying, a little screwdriver goes a long ways. An old screwdriver. See this edge? It's all uneven. You can always just take it here and then even that out. Put you a tack. You're good. And then just sometimes you have to work it with a little body hammer. Bang it in here or there in the corners. But eventually it'll all come out. And then once we get it all spot tack on here and real strong and sturdy again, that's when you take your hammer and we'll bend this edge back over like factory. So I'm about to go eat lunch and jump on the Harley, go for a quick ride, eat lunch, and when I get back, I'll weld this up here. We'll get that, and then we'll get this up on the lift, and I'll show you what I mean from spot tacking it from the bottom, and then I'll bend this edge over for you guys, and you'll see what it looks like as a finished result. All right, see you in a little bit.